The best way I've come up with so far to describe what it is, because I'm sort of on the fence of whether it's a thing at all. Um, there's obviously every single day you see the controversy back and forth with there's the old guard, right? The long standing individuals such as Michael King with iPullRank or Lily Ray or Rand Fishkin, Danny Sullivan at Google. They're all kind of throwing out these notions that land somewhere in the middle. Like none of them, even Michael King, who I think has somewhat is closer on the pro geo side. He's definitely saying things like, for example, he's said that he thinks SEO is currently deprecated. And then I've heard others who say things like, well, it's just bad SEO. I tend to, and it's difficult because if we're simply talking about the subject itself, the best description I've been able to come up with is I think that it is brand building and PR with SEO characteristics. Because you can break out each aspect of it. You ask any of these supposed experts on geo, the new one, right? The ones that haven't been doing SEO and all of a sudden they have a service. You ask them, what are the things you'll implement? What are the tactics? And inevitably, what they're going to describe are things that are characteristic to SEO. They're going to describe adding schema, building citations, amplifying content, right? And there's all these different names and topics around the content on your site, chunking, vectors, cosine similarity, and all those things are real things. They're not new things. I think there's truth to the idea that calling it geo, calling it AEO, or any of these new labels is really just packaging and merchandising. I do think that. I will say too that I find that if you take in the whole picture of the new landscape, and I will agree that it's not just merely SEO, right? I don't think that nothing's changed. A lot's changed. But I don't think anybody's more prepared to lead a company into this new frontier than genuinely skilled and experienced SEOs. You can sort of just simplify the whole entire problem down to, for the last 15 years, we've all been trying to deconstruct a black box. It's just a different black box. And at the moment, the new black box takes a whole lot of its cues and information from the black box we've been working on for 15 years. And it hasn't lost its relevance either. I read a study maybe 3 weeks ago or so where over like a 6 or 9 month period, initially a group of consumers were doing geo searches or AI searches and indicating that they like ChatGPT more. But then a follow-up with the same individuals after, say, I want to say it was 6 months, found that it depended on which goal they had. And if it was for local service-based businesses, what they found is that their sentiment towards ChatGPT had actually dropped from their initial survey. So the takeaway from that is a lot of people think that like it's new and shiny and everybody was checking it out. But then what they've found is that especially when it relates to local or service-based businesses, either it doesn't deliver the best results or it can't necessarily satisfy the searcher all by itself. So it perhaps gives you a little bit of a jumping off point. It does a bunch of research for you, but then people are still going to Google and sort of completing or closing that loop with reading reviews, getting your phone number, going to your website, and so forth. So I find myself a bit in the middle of the fray. I do think I've met 10 or so of these geo experts that have either come across my radar from clients who are talking to them, or from just them reaching out to me and wanting to offer their services through me. And the ones that haven't been doing SEO for the last 5-10 years, I look at their deliverables and I talk to them about the things they suggest implementing. And oftentimes, I got to say that what they're really offering is simply bad SEO. That what they're calling geo is just bad SEO, right? AI slop content, mass produce, citation spam. They are sort of acting like schema is this big revolutionary concept. And I mean, SEOs have been debating the schema question for years, and Google's even weighed in on like schema not being a ranking factor. So, it's sort of like the more things change, the more they stay the same. We still have the same infighting and the same going round and round and around on the same topics all the time. But I don't particularly care for the new labels, because I think it gives consumers the false notion that it's vastly different than doing good SEO, or that they don't have any correlation. And here's why that bothers me the most. Not only with a couple of our clients, but in some other relationships that I'm privy to, what I'm finding by and large is that they'll implement some of the things that they suggest, and then when it doesn't work, or they don't see any needle moving, what they inevitably do is point the finger at some aspect of SEO and say, oh, well, it would have worked if, right? And then they start picking apart, well, it would have worked if we'd had the right schema. It would have worked if the site authority was higher. It would have worked if we had more reviews. It would have worked if the content was better. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, maybe you're right, but if that's the case, then how is doing geo any different than doing good SEO? And I think that it's different in that we now have new targets for things like offsite content. We have to now consider citation relevance. We have to consider things that I think are somewhat new concepts, like consensus building, consensus manufacturing, right? But like, had it not been for the fact that AI presents an entirely new interface for the customer or the client, everybody would simply be looking at this as a new SEO problem. I think there's this false notion that, ooh, here's our chance. The playing field has reset. Let's go dominate early. We're going to get ahead of this one because we missed out, or we didn't do SEO long enough, strong enough, good enough, whatever. So therefore, AI is this new thing. We'll just go do it. And leaving out the entire notion that, well, your SEO has something to do with it. A lot. A pretty significant impact on it. You do have an opportunity right now to shape the future. I often tell clients that they need to start thinking of AI less like a robot and more like the smartest person who's ever lived, who remembers everything. They never forget anything, ever. And when you start thinking about it like that, you start to think about the customer journey, the client journey, and you start to realize that AI knows everything. It can look into every nook and cranny and figure out. It knows all your reviews, good and bad. It knows all your reviews on other sites besides Google, right? So it knows about all the Yelp ones that we all hate. It knows about Glassdoor, so it now knows employee sentiment. It knows Reddit threads. It's read all of them, and they're all in the body of knowledge that it has. And now when you do a query, it has done all the research you would have spent hours and opened up multiple tabs doing, and it hands you insight, synthesized insight, right, from all that information. And then just basically says, here you go, this is who you should be considering. Well, it's both. You should not ignore the legacy aspects of SEO, but you do have somewhat of a new opportunity to shape that new future, right? You do get a chance right now to get out in front of the trend and determine how AI perceives your brand and how AI understands every aspect of you. So, we're trying to just sort of walk this fine line between how much of the legacy SEO do we keep? How much is still relevant? Because it's not zero.